Good evening, adventurers. Tonight we have another D&D story. Although it is a horror story in part, it isn't anything to do with the players of the game, but instead it is about the ultimate evil in all of Dungeons & Dragons, the Dice Gods. Our writer's DM seems to be critting him in almost every fight, and he has killed a multitude of his characters. Let's get into it. Tonight's tale is called The Ballad of Busted PCs, a tragic retelling of dead NPCs. So, I recently posted about my stepson killing me 6 times in less than a year. After we spoke on it, I recalled that one of those deaths actually wasn't, but it was super close. They had to rush to pick me up after the fight to perform my next death save. Either way, he has killed me 5 times. Here is an accounting of those 5 different deaths and what led to them. Death number 1. Rue, the Azimar monk. Rue was my first character for the DM's first ever campaign. We were running Tales from the Yawning Portal. So first up was the Sunless Citadel. Taking a cue from the name of the dungeon, I decided to make my monk a Sun Soul monk with a backstory of being fated to battle an evil god that had cursed his people's land. Rue was prophesied after the region he was in went afoul of a wandering god who used the rites of hospitality to enter each of the townships and do wicked things to them to push the envelope. Long story short, they ended up kicking him out and he curses the region. Later, a more benevolent god travels there, and he is turned away by all of the towns save the last he stopped in, who recalled their ancient oath to aid wanderers. So he gifted them with a prophecy that Rue would be born and would one day rise up to take on the one that cursed them and lifted it. So of course he died. Here's how. We reached 3rd level, and the final battle of the Sunless Citadel underneath a goofy fruit tree. I, being the Azimar that got wings, decided to fly in and pop the big boss a few times. He immediately looks up, casts a cantrip, and max damages me to drop me. I was already a little low on HP, but expected to live at least 1 round. I wasn't that low. So my companions end up fighting a hectic battle in which my wife's druid named Pig also dies. The 2 remaining members of the group end up winning the battle and moving on to the Forge of Fury. I never really got to establish much of Rue's character, other than he was super overconfident for having been told all of his life that he was a child of destiny that would save his people. So he just sort of assumed that he wouldn't die there. I like to think these people are still waiting for him to return. He was adventuring to complete his training and hone his skills for the final confrontation. Death number 2. Dorvin the Dwarf Forge Cleric, or Dwarven as he came to be called. I decided that since I was getting hit so much, I should get some plate armour and a high AC and smugly sit inside my tin can. So I built Dorvin. His AC was 22. He was an interesting character who considered himself an expert in all things of the Forge, and put himself in harm's way to protect his allies. So we end up travelling through the entire Forge of Fury adventure without much issue. This is when the 6th death occurred, and I was dropped by a Durga only to be rescued at the 0 hour. Overall, he felt like a solid character, ended up getting him to 5th level. But that's when the other shoe dropped. During the end of the dungeon, when the dragon pops up and starts fighting us, I'm taken down almost immediately due to the stupid decisions of the rest of my group. I tried to get us to hide in an alcove that would allow us a moment of respite in this epic battle, but one of the other players decided to hold back and get dropped. You'll hear more about Terminal Lance later. Being the cleric, I go in and lay some cure wounds in order to pick him up and protect his body until he can stand and rush inside. Unfortunately, Dorvin couldn't avoid the breath weapon, which rolled just a few short of max damage, and I was down again. The party somehow scraped through this entire fight by the skin of their teeth, dropping the dragon and dragging Dorvin's lifeless body back out of the forge, and eventually all the way to Neverwinter, where he was resurrected, at great cost to the team. This wasn't the last of old Dorvin's brushes with death, however. My stepson decided to try his hand at creating his own dungeon, so we set off to battle Minotaurs within a maze that included little teleportation orbs. It was actually quite fun until I was crit twice in a row by a Minotaur and dropped in the first round, because he also rolled max damage on the first and almost max on the second attack. My stepson felt really bad about it, so he had my deity intervene, saying it was not my time and immediately resurrected me. So I came awake, finished out the fight, and we continued on our merry way. Now, my character was a little chagrined and very angry at the ranger who kept engaging things in melee, even though he was a ranged ranger. So, after a stern dwarven talking to of a character known as Terminal Lance, whose secret to a long life through all of this has been hydro-loading every chance he got, even if the water was stagnant and full of disease. Terminal Lance finally decides that he should hang back a bit and let the Tin Can Dwarf stay up front as we move through the maze. This new marching order, of course, leads to me wandering directly into a roper, where all 4 tentacles hit me. I'm dragged into its mouth and eaten. I die. Again. In the next session. At which point the other players say, screw this place, and dip out, hoping to get some more supplies in town and find another adventurer to assist them. A Goliath barbarian that was also on the verge of dying before the dreaded holiday hiatus that ended up killing the game overall. Death number 3. Rayla Devilsbane, a Cholton human paladin of Tyr. This is the most recent character death by my stepson. While in the Elfsong Tavern, we are tasked with connecting with a certain person who was spying on a cult we needed info on. I'll keep it vague in case others end up running Descent into Avernus. So as this is going on, of course a group of bandits walk in, looking to off our contact. Rayla and our cleric to Helm weren't having it, so we engage in a fight. Now this entire outcome is mostly our fault, as nobody was really focus firing like they should, and we tried to take down a bandit captain before the mooks around him. But basically, it almost didn't matter, as we would all whiff for entire rounds while being hit at least half the time by his enemies. We had a wild-shaped druid in bear form, a scribe wizard, a rogue, a paladin, me, and the cleric. We spend round after round trying to drop this bandit leader, who's giving us a lot of smack talk every time he lands a blow. I drop, twice, only to be brought back up by the cleric. The cleric is dropped, and I lay on hands in order to bring him back up. Back and forth we go until finally, I drop, and proceed to roll 2 death saves, have a failed medicine check from the wizard, only to fail my 3rd death save. And there it was, another death at the hands of my stepson. Fortunately, Rayla had spent a lot of time at the Temple to Tyr in the outer city of Baldur's Gate, so she was brought back from the dead in exchange for a favour, which I'm kind of hoping is just figure out what the hell happened to Elturel. I knew as soon as I rolled the first failed death save that I was going to experience another dead player character. I knew it, and here it was, death number 5 in less than a year. At this point I've become desensitised to character death, and at least if it happens in a more permanent way, Tasha's just came out and I can try something new and exciting. Anyways, here it was, the write-up of my consistently dying characters that quite a few people were asking me for. Some of these were down to bad player decisions coupled with solid rolls from the bad guys. Others it seems that Nuffle, who's my personal out-of-character deity in Dungeons & Dragons at this point, just wanted me gone. Either way, my stepson is a good DM and I really enjoy being in his games. So join me in raising a glass to each of these fallen heroes and wish Rayla luck as she unwittingly heads off into a situation far more dangerous than she could ever realise. And there we have it. The dice giveth and the dice taketh away. That was a fun retelling of the many unfortunate demises of our writers' characters, and I'm happy to be reading a story from someone who has nothing but praise for their DM and how fun their games are. The dice, on the other hand, are clearly a harsh mistress, and we do have to wonder what kind of cardinal sin against the dice gods our writer has committed. He must be some malevolent entity to cause such a misfortune in his rolls. That or he's Will Wheaton. Good night.